We'll start the show in just a minute, but first, a word from our premier brand sponsor, CasaGo, and co-sponsors Guest Ranger and Good Neighbor Tech.
CasaGo's founder, Steve Schwab, has been quoted as saying, "You can only be a local in one place." This simple yet profound statement is the basis of CasaGo's franchise model, which allows locally owned vacation rental management companies the ability to compete at a national level by leveraging the systems, software, and support and buying power of a much larger organization.
As a CasaGo franchisee, you have the freedom to run your business with the support of a community of like-minded professionals while leveraging the economies of scale and buying power to increase profitability and reduce operating costs.
Guest Ranger is the premier guest screening and chargeback protection solution. Leveraging AI, their tool effectively detects fraudulent activity, fake IDs, and underage guests, while also performing comprehensive dynamic background checks. With Guest Ranger, businesses can rest assured that their customers are safe and secure.
Good Neighbor Tech allows you to manage your properties remotely and intelligently, protecting your owners and your guests. Their smart Wi-Fi locks allow you to provide temporary access to home and garage from anywhere and keep track of when guests and service providers are in the property. Good Neighbor Tech provides the ability for you to collect email addresses from all guests staying in a property, not just the one who booked the reservation. Every guest who connects to the internet will see your branded welcome page and be prompted to provide their email address in order to connect to the Wi-Fi.
Visit casago.com/franchise, guestranger.com, and goodneighbortech.com for more information.
Welcome to Alex and Annie, the Real Women of Vacation Rentals. I'm Alex.
And I'm Annie.
And we are joined today for the second time now with Steve Trover, who is the CEO and founder of Better Talent. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
We're so glad to have you. Yeah, we're so glad to have you. I actually was looking to try and start the interview off with a really good dad joke, but I just couldn't find one that I feel like you didn't know. So I'll work on that for the next time we talk together.
We'll count on that. Absolutely.
So, Steve, before we get started, I think everybody that is active within our industry and that goes to conferences certainly knows who you are. But we've got a wide range of listeners. Can you give a little bit of background on who you are and what Better Talent does?
Absolutely. So I have been in the vacation rental industry since 1997. Started a company here in the Orlando area where I'm based now, and grew that to about 400 properties under management over a 20-year period. So slowly but surely, and had a real estate company, a property management company. We had an interior design company called Beyond Furnishings. Ultimately had a development company called Purpose Built. And so we would design, spec, and build vacation homes that we would furnish. We would then sell and then manage, and did that again over a 20-year period. Went into 4 different markets, 3 more outside of Orlando, 1 in Captiva Island, Florida, about 3 hours southwest of Orlando. In San Diego, we bought a company there in the La Jolla area, and then Sun Valley, Idaho, kind of did a startup there as well. And so enjoyed that for a lot of years. I am the past vice president and president of VRMA, so spent a lot of years on industry boards, and then also developed a proprietary platform with a developer out of Idaho to run the day-to-day business. That was a PMS platform, really one of the first, if not the first, SaaS platforms that had a booking engine going back 20 plus years ago. That ultimately became LiveRes, which obviously private equity owns today with Inhabit. So been super involved in all aspects of the business. Sold my group of companies about 6.5 years ago now. Got into consulting. The first thing I got asked to do was hire. And so I saw that as a need in the industry, was kind of doing it with the traditional recruiting model, and realized that wasn't going to work in our industry. Recruiters tend to charge 20-30% of the salary, and it just didn't make sense. And I never really liked paying that when I used them in my companies. And so we launched Better Talent 3 years ago with a different type of mindset to help companies identify, hire, and retain the best possible employees. And we do everything from a CEO to a housekeeper, maintenance. And so that's Better Talent today. And about a year ago, there was about 4 of us on the team. There's now 15. So we're growing pretty quick. And we've got close to 200 companies that we do business with today. So that's us.
Well, awesome. I can say from experience, Better Talent is like literally the best group of people to work with. I found myself in a situation, we were just sharing this recently, I found myself in a situation where I was looking for a job and didn't think I was going to be looking for a job, and kind of connected with you and your team and Stephanie. And I think that one of the things I really liked about the way you guys handle things is you really get to know the person before you kind of scope out what jobs would be. And the job that I have now with Marriott Homes and Villas, you guys brought to me and were like, you really should do this. And I remember thinking, no, this is not for me at all. And you were like, really, just look at it. I really think this is a good fit. And I think that you kind of assessed that role, and knowing me both personally, professionally, and knowing me, you really found like the spot for me to land. And I can't thank you enough for what your team did, but I think it just speaks to how you guys approach staffing that no one else is really doing.
Yeah, we really feel like we have in essence, kind of like a VRM has two customers, so do we. So VRMs have the owner and the guests. Well, we have the talent and our client. And if we play matchmaker well, the net result helps both the client and the talent. And that's what we want to do. And that takes, more than just going, oh, here's a bunch of people, pick one. It's really looking at that person. And with you in that situation, we knew that you were tailor-made for this role and excited about it. And, it sometimes is hard because sometimes people that are going through a transition or changing a job, they're not necessarily in the most confident place that they can be in, right? Because something happened, maybe they got laid off, maybe they're just not happy in the current scenario. And so one of our core values at Better Talent is empathy. And Stephanie, who you mentioned, is one of the most empathetic people you'll ever meet in your life.
She's amazing.
And the reason why she's in that role is because of that. And so she does a really good job meeting with the talent and then looking at that, and then looking at, your behavioral construct. We do behavioral profiling and personality testing. And so you just were tailor-made for the role. And so as an example, and that's a big win for us. So thank you for being that. So, you want to thank me, but it's kind of funny because people will come up to me at conferences like, oh, thank you. You got me my job. I'm like, I didn't get you your job. You got your
right.
job.
You did. Yeah.
You're the matchmaker in between, but it's so funny too. Cause I remember when I don't know who had posted it. Maybe it was Better Talent when you posted the job for Marriott, and I saw it and I'm like, I immediately texted Annie. I'm like, this is perfect for you. And like, especially knowing that you already had a great relationship with that company. And I remember you saying, Steve and Better Talent keep telling me like, this is great for me. And like you at first didn't think that it was.
No.
That, Steve, to your point, like, and you weren't at that. I don't think that you necessarily had to find a job at that point, but I don't know that you were also 100% confident, right? In your abilities that was the right job for you, but it was 100% the right job. I mean, it's hard sometimes to see in the moment, like what's right in front of you, but that everybody else can see.
Yeah, no. And I think that was what was great again, because Steve and Stephanie both like took the time to talk about like, just really, really look at it. Like, don't just look at like the role, like the bullet points of the role, like really read it through and understand, and then have a conversation about it. And so it was one of those things where it's like, I think you get job opportunities that come across your desk. And sometimes if you don't take I definitely have a new appreciation for really reading something and kind of questioning and maybe doing a little more research about something. But it was just, it kept coming to me from so many different directions. But you and Stephanie were both like, we know this is the right role for you. And I think you gave me that confidence to say like, okay, all of the things that I've been doing that maybe I felt were not the right package of experience, they became the right package of experience for this role. And you guys knew it instinctively just from talking to, the people at Marriott that you were working with, and then reading it through. And again, knowing me and understanding me and taking the time, like Stephanie took the time to get to know me. I already knew you, but she took the time to like really know what drives me and what my passions were and the things that make me tick every day. And I think that that's really something that a lot of hiring and staffing agencies, they just don't take the time to do, because it's a transactional relationship, and not, like you said, the empathy has to be there to understand the fit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And to be clear, we're not always capable of doing that at scale. And
sure.
And sometimes we try to meet with everybody we possibly can. But no matter how we do this, we do it with empathy. It's just integrated into the process. And, we want to treat the talent side, unlike a lot of recruiters. I got to say this, and there's some great recruiters out there, I know, but But so many of them, it's a numbers game. And we never want to be like that. If we ever feel like that to somebody, give me a call. Because we don't want that to be the case. We really do care about that side of it. And we know that without the talent side, we won't have any clients. Right. So,
right. Yeah. We'll be back in just a minute after word from our premier brand sponsor, Costco.
I've done every position in this company. I mean, started from the ground up. I was done right. I just did everything. So I've done it all. Not to say that I don't still enjoy vacuuming. I love that. You get burned out a little bit and you lose your, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if I can do this anymore.
That's Kelly Hill, Costco's franchisee from McCall, Idaho. Her company, Done Right Management, had been a leader in the market for many years, but as larger national companies started to gain ground, Kelly felt like she was losing control of the business.
I was my way out the door before Costco came. I really was. I think I was considering selling the company because I was at that point where I was getting like, maybe this isn't for me. Ryan and Steve approached me, and it was like they sang a song to me because I was like, this is what I need. I need direction. I'm looking at the bigger companies and I'll say, Vicasa's out there and I admire them for a lot that they do. They have a lot of bandwidth here. They have, bulk. And so they can do things a lot cheaper and their systems are great. And I looked at Costco as the opportunity that we needed to get there, to have some of those advantages.
We asked Kelly about the transition to becoming part of Costco and her thoughts on the benefits of becoming part of their franchise model.
We had just switched to a different PMS system that same year. So it was a real challenging year, but it was so worth it because Streamline is just, it's the best of breed. And I love touting that. When I meet with owners, I'm like, we use Streamline software. It's the best in the industry. That's the one main thing, is that the training and the support that they've given us. They are just there. Anything we need.
Kelly's story is one that resonates with many of our franchisees. Switching software is a big decision. Costco's full-time support staff are here to help make this process significantly easier and more efficient than a regular software switch.
Ryan and Steve, they just really said, you can still do this. We're here for you. And if we have all these things in place, your company can run smoothly, and it does. And I think that, I can take off for a week and I know I'm going to come back and everything is running as good, if not better than when I was here. So it's great.
Visit Costco.com/franchise to hear more stories from franchisees like Kelly and inquire about territory opportunities and available markets.
Well, you're dealing with people's lives and their futures. It's a pretty big responsibility, right? And I've got an awesome Better Talent mug in my hand right now for anybody who's watching on YouTube. But they're great. The other side of it says a quote, which I love this quote: the only way to do great work is to love what you do, don't settle. And that's so true. And, having just also gone through a major life change and transition, leaving my job of 13 years and moving to Costco, actually, Annie and I started both of our new jobs on the exact same day. It's a lot there's a lot of stress that goes along with making that decision to take a new job or leave a job. And you don't want to have to be doing this multiple times. This is definitely something that you ideally want to do only a few times in your lifetime, but you guys definitely mitigate the uncertainty of it quite well. But what are you seeing out in just the industry right now? Obviously workforce has been an issue for all industries really in the last couple of years, but what are the biggest trends that you're seeing and challenges within our industry that still exist?
Yeah, sure. What's interesting is in talking to people, and especially the last couple of weeks here, but over the past couple of months, what's shifted is people, because of the big layoffs by Vicasa and some of the others in the industry that are of scale. There's this feeling like, all of a sudden there's this talent flood. And you hear these big splashy news stories about tech companies laying off a bunch of people. The reality is we are at record low unemployment. The numbers just came out for January. They're as strong as they've ever been, way above what they've projected them to be. And the only sector of all sectors that went backwards was tech. And it was just a little bit. Every other sector of employment is up. Guess what the number one is? hospitality, right? And so
Oh, wow.
the employment side of this is as acute as ever. The challenge of getting great talent is harder than ever. And so that's what's happening in our industry. And then you have the explosion within our industry of growth and all of these new startup companies and, kind of the Airbnb crowd that start with a few and all of a sudden they're a management company. The origin stories have shifted a little bit, but there's more people coming into the space as operators than there ever has been. And so there is an acute a shortage of talent, and especially those people that understand this industry and understand what they're doing. So my message to our industry, especially if you've been in it for a few years or a long time, you're very valuable. So if you think you get laid off or you're not happy in a current situation, please know that you have a lot of opportunity in this industry. If you understand it, know it, and can speak the language, there are a lot of people that want to work with you. And so be confident that you have that. And, nobody gets a degree in vacation rental management. Nobody all kind of tripped into this thing, right?
Yeah.
Me, 26 years ago, I fell into it, right? That said, it's become, especially over the last few years, something of significant value to have experience in this space. So please know that if you're out there and you're looking, and give us a call. So.
Yeah. And I think, Sue, just watching your posts over the last couple of years that we've known you and seeing the jobs that you're posting and the salaries that companies are paying. I mean, this is, we're really becoming one heck of an industry. That there are some really good jobs that are out there, well into the six figures. And that also did not used to be the case. I mean, that's definitely something that's risen. But of course, there's a lot more revenue coming into the businesses now. And the more forward thinking people are understanding that you get what you pay for. And if you want to retain the best talent, you also have to have, something that's going to match them compensation wise.
One of my favorite old kind of quotes is, if you pay peanuts, you'll get monkeys. Historically, our industry got a bunch of monkeys. So, that's not the case anymore. And, we still have obviously frontline positions and different things like that, where there's hourly positions. But to your point, there's a lot of roles now that pay really strong. And you have to be able to do that if you want the right talent. There's a balance there, and you've got to obviously look at the budget, and you got to do it within that. And you got to be very cognizant and careful. And one of the things that we're really focusing on now, we call the people stack. And if you think about what a shift that's happened in the last several years in our industry, you started hearing the term tech stack. And I remember, from my technology background, I remember devs used to call the tech stack. I'm like, what's a tech stack? And I started to understand that. And then it started to become more pervasive, and everybody talking about it. And they're looking at all the different technologies that they leverage to optimize the business, right? Which is great. I'm a technologist. Our tech stack is massive at Better Talent. The people stack, though, really lends itself and speaks to the fact that most companies today, if they're running optimally, don't just have full-time employees with big salaries. They might have full-time, part-time, independent contractors, consultants, global talent, virtual assistants, that type of thing. And what we do with our clients is really look at their overall cost structure, which, by the way, if you look at a VRM's P&L, I've looked at hundreds, if not 1,000 of them. The number one cost by far on every P&L of every VRM I've ever looked at is people. It's your salary. And then if you add to that anything you use from a consulting perspective or independent contractors, that's your biggest cost structure. So, as much as we all like to look at the tech stack and optimize that, I think that's a good practice. I'm not downplaying it, but we ought to be looking at the most expensive part of our business and optimizing that. And so that's a big part of what we help clients do today, is look at that. And so sometimes a company with 62 properties will say, Steve, I really need a full-time revenue manager. And I might say, well, maybe you do, because your 62 properties are, massive properties and create a bunch of revenue. But in most cases at that scale, they're not ready for a full-time revenue manager, right? And so that's where we work with a consultant or one of the third-party companies that do that on an outsourced basis, so that they can do it more efficiently and do it very effectively, as opposed to having that full-time person. So that's an example of the types of things that we do to optimize. And so I see that as a big trend. I mean, we've all had seasonal employees and independent contractors since the beginning of time, but I think you're seeing more of an evolution there to really optimize that. So we're really pushing that people stack concept today.
Yeah, I love that when somebody says what their tech stack is, I'm going to ask, well, what's your people stack?
We were just talking to Matt Durrett from Cozy Vacations, and he was talking about the importance of that culture and building the culture and again, the people stack aspect of it. And I think that we talked about the importance of having buy-in and from all of your team members and having them all understand the mission. So I'd love to hear like your take, because I think that you and Brooke Faust are two people that kind of brought this sort of notion of, having people that have specific disciplines to get the team aligned and on message and on point. But again, having buy-in from everybody and creating a culture of it's not so much inclusiveness, but just that everybody is an integral part of how the machine runs. And I think it goes back to the way you guys are staffing and putting people, right personalities in the right places. And I kind of would love to learn a little bit more about how you help managers assess the talent and really put together the right team and optimize.
Absolutely. One of my favorite quotes is from Patrick Lencioni. He's written 100 different books, but it's if you could get everybody on the team rowing in the same direction, you can dominate any industry at any time. And so, what you're talking about is EOS, which is Entrepreneurial Operating System. It comes out of a book called Traction. I absolutely recommend everyone read one of two books, Traction, and it's a sister book called Rocket Fuel. And Rocket Fuel speaks to the relationship between the visionary, and this industry is full of really great visionaries, people that came in with a vision and all the different ways that we do this thing. And it's part of what has attracted me and kept me in this industry is the uniqueness of the different business models. I'm hyper excited to meet a new company and learn, about their vision. But what I will tell you is most of the time, if they don't have somebody to execute on that vision or a group of individuals that, again, are rowing in the right direction, that vision is not going to happen.
Yeah.
And, I ran a really great company, I believe, for a lot of years. I waited way too long to get my integrator. And so the integrator in EOS speak is really the person that takes that vision, works with the individuals on the team, the different departmental leads, the leadership team, to execute on the vision. They hold that person accountable, or these individuals, but they also coach them in a way that helps them, gives them the tools to do this really well, and they align the team. And at Better Talent, for example, Adam Tolley is our COO. He's our integrator. He runs this business. I may be the visionary, but if I didn't have him, we wouldn't execute at the level that we do. And so we really encourage every client to make sure that they have that structure, have that integrator, and then and start to build the leadership team, and then get the right people in each one of those roles from a personality perspective, from a cognitive ability perspective, maybe a background and experience perspective, so that not only are they capable of the job, they're going to love that job because they're designed for it.
In the right spot.
You're designed for it, like Annie is, and you are in the roles that you are. You're going to love your job. You're going to stick around, and you're going to execute. And so, but it takes that kind of visionary integrator 1-2 punch to really do that well within organizations. And so I highly recommend both those books.
Yeah. After the integrator, what would you say is the next most important role to have, or personality?
I would say in the VRM, a director of operations, because if you think about this industry, a lot of us, myself included, we love the tech stack. We love to talk about everything from a marketing perspective. I always say I recruited the best business development person ever because Brooke was my business development guy. Look at what he's doing now. So that was fun for me and very important. But when you think about it, if you don't clean these properties well and you don't maintain them well, nothing else matters. Right. And so really that operational person that's leading the charge on those components, guest services probably being in amongst that, guest experience. If we don't have somebody really leading that charge, we don't have the foundation. If we don't have the foundation, I don't care how good of a marketer you are. I don't care if you use inventory and blow it up with the number of properties. Your company's going to blow up because
that's so true. We've had that conversation with several people. It's like it doesn't matter. You can have the best marketing in the world, but if you can't keep your condos clean, you're not going to have you can get people there, but they'll never come back, and they'll share that they had a terrible experience. So yeah,
So
that makes sense. That makes sense.
I used to say, we were really great at marketing and we got all these things and we got the best ADR, and then the guest shows up and we didn't inspect it well. And it's a mess. And we ruined all that.
Right.
Gotta be able to deliver on the promise.
Yeah. I have a question going back to the integrator, because I would imagine that there's likely some tough conversations that have to happen. I mean, I think that visionaries tend to, they get to a certain level and their ego kind of leads them to make decisions, and you probably have to help them separate the vision and their ego and acknowledge that they are not the right person. So how do you have that conversation with somebody to say, you're really, really great and what you want to do is amazing, but you're not the person to carry this forward?
Mm-hmm. To know me after 26 years in this industry is to know that I am a very direct individual, especially with my visionary friends. Yeah. And when it comes to visionaries, they're exactly like that. And they're not all egotistical.
They're not bad people. No, there's nothing wrong.
No. And I love talking. They're my people. Okay.
Right.
But because they're my people, I also will say, look, this is what you really, really need. You've waited too long like I did. So it's easy for me to say because I did it too. Right. Yeah. And I sat myself in that kind of general manager or COO role way longer than I should have as a VRM. And so I encourage them to say, look, you're not the person to do these things. And when I dig in and I start asking them what they like to do and what they don't like to do, they almost always tell me verbatim all of the things that really are what a visionary does. And when they say what they don't like to do, it's what the integrator does. And so it's kind of an epiphany that happens through that process. And then they realize, no, I really need somebody to run the day to day. And when they do, it lets them do more of the things that they love. In my case, as a VRM, I love doing biz dev. I loved marketing. I love doing product development with purpose built. I did not love, and I was not good at the repetitive nature of making sure housekeeping was done well, or maintenance, or guest services. Did we track it and look at it? Yeah, but I needed somebody running that part of the business and doing it really well. And so that's what I encourage. And we have tough conversations. Another thing that visionaries tend to do, and again, this is another thing I'm guilty of, is we like ourselves a lot. And we end up hiring ourselves. And what I mean by that is when you get into an interview and you don't understand kind of somebody's behavioral makeup, you tend to hire people that are like you. Right. I'm actually going to do a graphic where I have somebody sitting across from the interviewee and there's a mirror and they're just looking into the mirror because you tend to do that. Right. And, I really like that person. Well, really, it's just because they had a very similar personality traits. Well, the integrator and the visionary probably shouldn't have exactly the same personality traits. And so finding that person that is the yin to your yang is what makes this thing work. And so that's what we try to work on with the visionaries today and finding that integrator. And by the way, it is by far the hardest thing we do from a talent acquisition perspective, because there aren't enough of them in this industry, because so many visionaries waited too long to get one. And so we just haven't pulled that in like the hotel industry has, right? There's tens of thousands of hotel GMs. We don't have very many experienced GMs in this industry, only the scaled companies and those with the vision early on that did that. And it's usually the owner of the company that's running the day to day. And generally it's a mistake.
That's interesting too. I remember we had talked to Amy Hinote about this probably a year ago, and she was talking about like a GM boot camp or something along those lines. Yeah. And for the same reason that there just really is not that higher level type of training for those individuals. And really they a lot of them become GMs because, like we said earlier, they're doing a bunch of different things and they know kind of everything about the business, but they've never really had that actual training that you would receive on a hotel type of accommodations business. But do you think that there's opportunity for us to recruit more talent from the hotel side to come over? And if so, how do we do that?
Yeah. And it's actually something that we do on a regular basis. In fact, interestingly, when I finally did get my integrator as a VRM, I used to talk about this hotel GM because I used to go to his hotel for meetings. It was across the street from our office, and it was an older hotel, but it was a lot of 600 rooms. And every time I went there, it was probably like a $90 a night place back then. But everybody in the front desk, even the housekeepers, when you're walking through the hallways, you felt like you were at the Ritz-Carlton because they were really well trained, always said hello well and all that. And I used to say, when I finally hire a GM, I want to hire one like John Brost. And that was his name. And I finally hired him, and I hired him. I went,
Yeah.
I keep saying that. Why don't I just hire him?
Why just do it, right?
Yeah.
Changed my life. And I absolutely loved my job then, because I got off the things off my plate and I was able to go. And that's when I started doing purpose built. And he allowed me to do things visionary wise that I would never have been able to do if I didn't have him in that place. And now when he came on, and this is what I encourage people to do if they do hire somebody from the hotel industry, is I sat John down and I said, John, you used to manage one hotel. We have 346 of them. And what I meant by that is every single house has an individual owner, which is different for them. That's probably the biggest differentiation. And each property, in most cases, unless you have a condo product where they're similar, they're very unique, right? And so, and then they're geographically spread in a lot of cases, sometimes ridiculously so. And so it creates challenges that they're not used to. They're also used to, when you're talking about housekeeping, they have a cart and an elevator. Okay. So, and a bunch of boxes.
Supplies are right there.
Same, right. And as challenging it is for a GM to do that well with a hotel, it's infinitely more challenging in the vacation rental industry. So it does require some untraining or retraining or helping them to understand those nuances and those differences. That said, they are hospitality professionals. They have it in their
They have the gene. Yep.
They've got the gene. They gravitated toward it. They have really great training, and they can bring professionalism to your company that you never could have on your own. One of the other challenges with them, though, is they are used to having a playbook and rules and structure, right? If you work in a Marriott, I mean, everything's done a certain way, and there's SOPs for SOPs. And in our industry, we don't have that so much.
No.
Right. That's so true.
We're getting better.
We're getting better. But as a general rule, a lot of times you go in and it's like, well, how do you do that? Well, this is how we do it. Well, where's that written? It's not written. So
it's not written.
And so it does require them to understand that there's not an SOP. And the good news is, in John's case, he came in and he helped us develop a lot of those SOPs.
Oh, good.
Because he was a knowledgeable 30-year veteran of the hospitality industry. So that's why I like bringing those people across, but it definitely takes some, kind of retraining, if you will, and helping them to understand the nuances.
I think there's a lot of people in the industry, just in my experience, that they think they know how this side operates, and they make a lot of assumptions. Again, I like the way you put that, because I've always said, you manage a condominium, and you have 700 units in that building. There's 700 individually owned units. That's 700 general managers that you have to report to. They have a different marketing. They have a different marketing plan. They have a different budget. They have a different way they want their rooms. Like everything about it is so different. And so I think when people come from the hotel side, to your point, there is sort of that retraining that they have to be able to like move and think on the fly. Like there's just a lot of nuances. But I also know that had some of these existed years ago, when my husband and I were partners and started a vacation rental company, we had some of these tools out there for training and staffing and like the integrator, like our CEO at the time, really big vision, but ego was making decisions. And ultimately the company failed because of some decisions. But it's like, I think we now have a really nice base of information and breadth of experience that you can bring in from all sides to really, really make the vacation rental industry something that people can look at and be really proud to be a part of. For one, we're not hiding in the shadows as this rogue industry that is causing problems in a market, but one that can stand head to head against the big hotel, side of the business. I mean, we are part of hospitality. We are people that are driven, and that at the core of it, that's what we are. We just manage our hospitality a little different.
We certainly do. There's no question about it. And yet, if we can pull more of those people in that do have that in their DNA, we're going to be better off for it. So,
absolutely.
You're absolutely right. We have a lot more structure than we had 5, 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So, it's definitely evolving.
I was speaking with one of our Costco franchisees this morning that is a longtime operator that was actually our first one that came over to our system. And they were saying how, back 5-6 years ago, they started recognizing a need for having more SOPs, more things documented, that their business was doing well, but they were starting to feel that pull of like, there's things we could be losing if we don't start, getting things a little bit more aligned and tightened in. And that's when they decided to come under the franchise. But since also being part of the franchise, they've also implemented EOS. So they went from having like no structure to now they've got a lot of different things there to pull and to work together. But I think that's kind of the beginning of our industry really recognizing that. I know in previous roles that I've been in, that was always kind of the challenge of like, you know everything in your head of what you have done within the business and why you do certain things. But in order for the business to grow outside of the original leadership team, you have to be able to have something to stand on. And I think as we bring in more companies that start implementing EOS or doing franchise or starting to work with Marriotts and seeing these other ways of really just professionalizing their businesses, I think that's where we'll start to bring more of a wider pool of talent over. So it's the beginning of the next revolution for vacation rentals, I guess you could say.
These next 10 years are going to be amazing. And I mean, it's been a fun ride in the last 10, but I see this industry is just blowing the lid off and so many great things. And, what you guys are doing at Casago and the franchise model is clearly being accepted now. And that gives that structure or some of the structure that we don't have. Because everybody, I talk to companies every single day. By the way, I do all of the sales at Better Talent for one reason, and that is because we're building this company and growing it every day. And the best way to design something is to listen to the pain points. And I want to meet them at the very beginning. So I do it for that reason. And I get to talk to people, and I talked to a guy this morning. He started a company a couple of years ago, and he comes from a sales background, so he was able to really grow it. But he didn't know, what structure to put in place, or just kind of making it up on the fly. And so having a franchise model, having all the education podcasts like yours, we have more data and information to help us do what we do than ever before. But it's still. It's the wild west relative to where it's going. So it's going to be interesting. I for one, actually hope it doesn't get too structured like the hotel industry, because I think that gets kind of boring at some point.
Yeah.
But,
still got to
kind of like
that flair of creativity.
I tend to think that it'll stay a little wild west, just because that's the charm of vacation rentals. Like, let's face it. I mean, if you want the same cookie cutter experience, that's okay. I mean, some people really like that structure, but I think that's the great thing about vacation rentals is just like the personnel. I mean, you look at Lauren at Antebellum's and like what they do. I mean, like you're going to get a totally different experience there than you're going to get, with somebody in the North Carolina mountains or someone out West mountains. I mean, it's just the personalities behind these organizations that really gets an opportunity to shine that like a branded hotel doesn't, because of the structure, which is fine. But again, if we get too structured, you would erase some of the personality that makes us what we are.
And I think that's why, I mean, the right understanding behind how we professionalize, and we've had this conversation on the podcast so many times, is super important. And from a franchise perspective, at least as far as Casago is concerned, that's 100% how we feel, is that, I mean, every market, every company is going to operate differently. And this isn't like, as I'm explaining it to people, it's not like Subway where you have to make the subs exactly the same. Right. That's not how vacation rentals are. So, I mean, to try and say that you have to operate your business using just these tools and doing just these things, that's not the right way to look at it. I mean, and you, as people like us that know the industry, that's just the way the business works. And to your point, Annie, that is the charm, that they are just unique entities in themselves, and the markets to operate differently.
Well, one of the funniest things I get asked, and you guys probably get asked this a lot too, and I always kind of chuckle when it comes at me, as they say, "What's the industry best practice for that?"
It depends who you ask.
Best practice depends on the market and the operator.
There's no defense. I mean, we're all writing the rules as we go. I mean,
well, I think again, the best practice is the best practice for that entity that resonates with the customer that comes to them. So
and there's clearly things that we have learned along the way that are indeed, a quote unquote best practice, but This, and again, you guys know I do behavioral profiling, personality testing. This industry attracts a certain type of personality. In the construct that I use, it's called the Maverick. A lot of the founders are Mavericks.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Persuaders. But the Maverick profile is a very out of the box thinker. They don't like rules and structure, tend to be very visionary.
Right.
And so even if there is an industry best practice and somebody says this is the best way to do this type of individual is going to look at that and go, yeah, but I think I might tweak it this way. So I know when I give somebody a piece of advice that they're going to take about 82% of it, but they're going to put 18% on it of their own and maybe tweak it. And a lot of times they take something I will tell them and they'll do it better. And that's what the beauty of this industry is. We're all kind of piling on top of each other, different ideas and concepts to, as it evolves. And someday we may get there. I don't know if we ever will, to your point, because it is a very unique, it's not a cookie cutter product, right?
And I think that technology has a lot to do with that too. When you think about the struggles that the hotel industry has had from property management systems and their booking engines and stuff, their technology is not nearly as collaborative or open as vacation rental tech has been. And I feel like we, as an industry, have we've sped up real quick. We were way behind the times technology wise, but then COVID and that era hit, and we really now are well ahead of a lot of the hotel tech that's out there. But really hotels, it's like, they really can't be all that creative when it comes to things, and they can't pile different systems on systems because a lot of those are closed systems that they don't talk to anything else. So I think really, our creativity and collaboration has probably been built out of just necessity and ability really on our side of the industry. Yeah.
You're not locked in by almost anything in this industry. I kind of describe it from when an outsider, somebody outside the industry says, tell me about the industry. I said, well, I think of it like a big whiteboard and we create in it. And every day I think we've created all of it. And then the next day something new comes up.
Somebody wipes it clean.
And it makes it fun and interesting. And I hope it's always like that. And I think to some degree it will be. Reasons. So.
I think the really great thing about our industry, we've talked to a lot of people about this, is that even though we're competitors in various spaces, we all want to help each other be better. And there's a lot more camaraderie that I see in this side of hospitality than I saw in the hotel space. I feel like the hotel, again, there's so much structure that you're either with a brand or you're an independent, but you're operating in a way that you wouldn't want to share with your competitors because it's your secret sauce. And we're like sharing the recipe for that secret sauce because, to your point, people are going to tweak it and add the little spice that they need to add to make it their own.
Mm-hmm. So, and you guys are very good friends with Amber Hurdle, and
I was just going to ask. Bring her up.
So I met Amber several years ago. We were at a PI boot camp, and she wasn't in the vacation rental industry. Kind of knew a little bit about it, and when I met her, I'm like, man,
she's our people.
We need our people. We need her in this industry. And she's like, you guys seem like a bunch of yahoos. I'm like, yeah, we are.
We are.
And yet when she came in, she has gotten really well known in the industry in a very short period of time. And it's because she's our people. Right. And so I tirelessly look at people outside of the industry. And when I find someone like that, I'm like, hey, you got to come check this thing out.
Right. Gosh, look how great she's fit in with everybody in our industry.
She really has.
And really kind of goes hand in hand with what Better Talent is doing, and Employer Brand Central. I mean, what she's building and what she's opening companies' eyes to of why that is so important to have a strong employer brand, and how that not only creates loyalty within your existing team, but helps you recruit, better talent as well. People.
And that's why we partner with her, is because that piece of it that she does so well helps us do our job well, quite frankly.
Now, you're getting ready to do a road show with Amber, I believe, right?
Yeah, we've got Amber, Vintori, Turnover, or actually Turno as of yesterday. Turnover B&B rebranded yesterday. And Extent Team, the group of companies, we're doing a roadshow across Florida. So we're doing Sarasota, St. Augustine, and Fort Lauderdale Monday, Wednesday, and Friday of next week. So if you're even remotely close to those areas, we'd love to have you come out. We're excited about that roadshow. And we plan to do this, hopefully, if it's successful, in multiple places around the country and just go into the markets. But the focus is all on talent, right? It's all about the different components of talent. Extent Team is another partner of ours. A lot of times you don't need a full-time employee, like I said before. And so using them for global talent is really key. Turno helps optimize the housekeeping component of it. And that's really a big piece of the talent structure. And then Venturi, they're really focusing on this roadshow on their outsourced business development efforts, right? And so sometimes you need a full-time person, sometimes you can outsource to somebody like Venturi. And so we're really excited about that premise and that concept of really focusing on, again, the most expensive part of what we do in the vacation rental space. So
well, hopefully we'll have you back and talk about how that went, and you'll be able to tell us that you're going to be adding on more of this, because I think that staffing, if it's not, one of the most important, it's the single biggest thing people struggle with, regardless of where you're located. And again, attracting the talent is one thing, but retaining and training and making them get that buy-in from them is a whole nother thing. And I think partnering with the organizations that you're partnering with to do this roadshow, they're all exactly the right people. And, to your point, I think when we met Amber, we knew Amber was she was our people from the moment we met her, and she's stayed a very dear friend of ours. And having her energy in our industry, with her experience outside the industry, just in the things that she's done, is just such a tremendous asset for us.
Yeah,
absolutely. When made a big impact in such a short period of time. It's great.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. When I was in Miami last week, I was about to go on stage for the IMN panel, and somebody came up to me and they said, "Where are your feathers?" I said, "Feathers?" They said, "Yeah, the last time you were on stage, you had these huge feathers."
They thought
that was Amber. I was like, "What are you talking about? I don't remember this conference."
Funny.
Yeah, it was funny. I was like, no, that's our good friend Amber. There's Annie and Amber and Alex. It gets kind of hard to distinguish sometimes all the AAAs, but yeah, no, I'm excited to hear about how that goes too. I think that'll be super interesting. I do have another question, Steve. So as far as call centers, solutions and reservationists are going, what have you seen just, across the country? I mean, are most companies, are they looking to change because they can't necessarily get the workforce anymore? Are they more looking at offshore teams? And do you have any role in helping them find, extent team kind of people?
Yeah, no, I think there is a big shift. Offshoring is a thing, and I think it has its place. Extent Team, again, is a partner of ours. So when we have a client that has that need, we definitely will work with them on that. We've done some hiring offshore as well. There's also the fact that historically in our industry, most of the companies didn't want to use remote employees, right? So pre-COVID especially. After COVID, what happened during COVID is everybody had to work from home, and all of a sudden some of these companies went, this isn't so bad.
Not so bad, right?
It might actually be better in many respects. And so whether we do it offshore or we do it, in the United States, but we do it remotely, what that does is it greatly opens up your field of talent, right? And so when you do a job for a remote vacation planner, reservations agent, we get a lot of applications and really good people, but they're all over the country. And so I think that change to the mindset of where it has to be somebody in my office, full-time employee. Now it can be an outsourced company. There's a lot of companies that do that, Roll Voice, et cetera. And then there's companies like Extent Team that do it offshore. I think all of it is good for our industry and for the cost structure. We look at each company on a case by case. We look at the culture of the company, the team, what they're trying to accomplish, what the budget looks like, and then we make recommendations based on all of those things. So it's not just like everything with this industry. I don't think there's a cut and dry, this is the best way you should do that. It really comes down to that individual's company's needs, what they want to do, and how important the localized culture is to them. Some companies are refuse to do offshoring or even remote because they want to support their local community. And I get that. Yeah. But it does create a challenge a lot of times in some of these markets. And we work with clients that have, Big Sky, Montana has 2,000 people in it. Hatteras Island, North Carolina, 4,000. So total humans I'm talking about.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and we really want the world's best digital marketer. And they got to be in our office. And so,
if
you want the best, you got to go remote. Sometimes that's offshore, sometimes nearshore, sometimes here. But I love, in fact, I think one of the best things that came out of COVID, other than our industry just exploding, was certainly that people are more open to remote, whether that's offshore or not. I love that change has happened because it's helped us attract a lot more talent to the space. So
and run more profitable businesses too. I mean, I've heard of some companies that when they've moved to call centers in Jamaica, I mean, they've saved hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And increased conversion, because a lot of times the teams that you're able to get in the offshore organizations, I mean, they are really dialed into being sales representatives. I mean, like they're there to make sales. That's how they make their living. So it's a lot of businesses, their reservationist is also doing many things. I mean, they can be doing property management, talking to homeowners, taking reservations, doing marketing. So when you streamline somebody's tasks, they're only going to be more successful.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I go into a company and they start telling me all the things that different people do, I go, "Do you guys have a hat rack in your office?" They're like, "Well, you guys all wear so many different hats."
Right.
Depending on the hour of the day.
Oh my goodness.
Awesome. Well, Steve, we'd love to have you back again this year. I think just keeping an eye on the pulse of what is going on in workforce is a super interesting topic to us and a lot of our listeners. So we will be having you back, and hopefully we'll see you at the Northwest VRP event where we're going to be set up there with the podcast, and love to have you come over. You sat with us at the executive summit last year and chatted with us at one of our first live interviews. So
I would love to. I look forward to seeing you guys there. It's going to be a long but fun year, I can tell, with all the different shows. So.
Yeah, it's exciting. Absolutely. If anybody wants to get in touch, Steve, I know your URL is bettertalent.com. I remember last time you were on the podcast, I told you that's amazing that you guys got that URL. But great URL.
I love that. So bettertalent.com. My email address is steve@bettertalent.com. And you can also find me on LinkedIn. If we're not connected on LinkedIn, please track me down there. But certainly reach out, and we'd love to talk to you. I do want to say, most people say, "Oh yeah, that's that recruiting company." We're not a traditional recruiter. We don't charge as such. We're a subscription-based company, and we really are very, very, I hope you can tell, passionate about this industry. And so I'd love to talk to anybody that needs help of any type as it pertains to talent. So,
well, I would never use anybody but you ever again. So I'll just say that.
Yeah, Annie's like the perfect walking testimonial.
I may get a Better Talent tattoo. Temporary, of course.
Temporary. Stick-ons.
Yeah.
That's
awesome. Well, if anybody wants to get in touch with Annie and I, you can go to alexandanniepodcast.com. And thank you for listening. And until next time, bye, everybody.
All righty. Take care.